Hi there, Sean here. I'd like to talk about the miracle that can happen when we shift into living and loving without conditions. I had an experience yesterday, in fact, of something happening where a person I'm very close to showed up in a way that put me at what I call the edge of the envelope of my own evolution. I didn't really see it coming. In some ways I did see it coming, and yet left the ball in that person's court. And I'm okay with that because I did it with a respectful motive. So unlike the old days, I didn't beat myself up for not doing something sooner or reaching out sooner. In some ways, looking at the little sparkles on the water is what's starting to happen for me more and more as I continue this work. There's this flow of energy that just keeps going, and even though I spent the entire day with my old kicked in the stomach feeling, I was still also kind of with myself and with that person and trusting the outcomes. And yet in other ways I really wasn't. I was really believing that person needed to change, needed to take care of these abandoned parts of me in ways that it appeared she actually couldn't. And that's sort of a recipe for failure. We've all been in that in our relationships, where we arbitrarily decide, or more so have been programmed somewhere a long time ago, to believe that we need someone to show up differently than they are, to believe that we have a need that feels like it can only be met by them changing. And even though I so teach about how to undo the thinking that sets up those conditions, when we hit the edge of the envelope of our evolution, we really are up against the place that does not know how to do that. So that's why affirmations don't work, just steamrolling over it like I needed to do yesterday, because it was just a non-stop busy day. I honestly worked from, 4 a.m. till 1 a.m. and barely ate. It was just one of those non-stop busy days, and yet I saw myself kind of needing to do that during the day, but also the staying up late was a lot that I needed to have time completely with me and with her, with writing this really, really heartfelt letter where at first I finally acknowledged that I was hurt. And for me, it's hard to get in touch with being angry because I tend to beat myself up instead. But I did even acknowledge the ways I was angry or wanted her to change. And yet, by the end of the letter, I had already evolved myself to a place where I didn't need her to change. Everything was fine. I was fine. It was gone. The first or second iteration of the letter wasn't quite there. But as I went back through and I kept looking at, wait a minute, if I listen to my body about what I'm saying here, I'm a little scared to actually say this thing or send this part. And I could tell myself that I'm scared because of her reaction. But honestly, I notice now, the next morning, when I saw how everything turned around, that fear was those littlest parts of me screaming at me, here's what we're believing, here's how we need you to evolve so that you don't place our well-being out there in the hands of others. So as I started to really listen and go back through the letter and take out anything that was surreptitiously trying to get my needs met through her, or trying to surreptitiously request a change rather than really coming out and asking for it, or surreptitiously convey a feeling. And by surreptitiously, I mean the ways that we convey. I've noticed lately the ways we convey our feelings through tone of voice or actions or attitudes, rather than just really owning that we feel this way and we want this thing. I've started to believe that we honestly don't need to show our level of upset as a way to convey anything or to make anything change. Yes, we do, because we can't do any better lots of times, but it's not like it's needed. It really is, the change happens on the inside, and once that happens, we can convey everything we feel we want and need, and we can do it in a way that we get to celebrate their no or their yes. We can ask for what we want while still allowing them to give us the answer that comes to them. And most of all, we can finally keep our own counsel, a balance between the part of us that is big enough and spiritual enough and connected to the divine enough to hold ourselves and hold the other when they can't do any better, and not need them to show up any differently than they are. Also connected with the part of us that is how we really can use our intellect, that part of us that can solve problems, that adult on the parent-adult-child model of Eric Berne, the part that is really in the present, that doesn't have a story overlaid onto what's happening, that just looks at a situation without an emotional charge, that gets excited about seeing it as a problem to solve, in fact, because that is what the mind is good at. That is what the mind can do. And so that's why my heart-minding approach, I call it that, because we mind our heart and we use our mind to see through the errors in its logic. And finally, by listening to my heart, by listening to those littlest parts of me, that I went through the day having that kicked in the stomach feeling. And when I started to write to her, it felt a lot better, but then fear would come up, or anger, or a need to say something in a way that was scary for me. And as I listened to that, and I said, wait a minute, do I really need that thing? Is this thing really true? Am I just trying to make a point here? Am I just trying to punish her? Am I just trying to be right? Is it true? Really? And not in a way where I'm shaming myself, but really saying, oh, wait a minute. It actually feels better when I let go of needing her to change in that way. I feel better. Let's take out that sentence. I don't need to make that point. And it's hard for me as a writer. Sometimes I get married to the beautiful ways that I write something. I'm like, oh. But in writing, we have a thing called kill your darlings, which is kill those things that you wrote that you're in love with, but the piece doesn't really need them. And in this case, the piece really didn't need them. It was completely getting in the way of my experiencing my bottomless love for this person, my absolute connection, my unshakable support of her, no matter how she shows up. I am so completely in that place now. And who knows, something else may come up again. Life brings us the things that will push our buttons. I may lose this space, and I'm open to that, because that will just evolve another part of me. I feel so completely light and free. And now when I look back, it is exactly what I'm teaching, what I'm writing about in the book, which is the removal of conditions, the checking with yourself. Where have I placed a condition? On this person, on life, or on myself? Meaning, we tell the littlest parts of ourselves, this has to show up in a certain way in order for us to be okay and be happy. And as we start to take the time we really, really need to sit with those little parts of us and find out, no, we don't really need that, all is well, then this lightness, this freedom, this Last night at 3 a.m., I was just love flowing through me. I was this much sparkles. And nothing had changed from her perspective. I mean, it may have, but I didn't have a response from her. My well-being wasn't placed outside myself. So it was funny because when my Wisdom Wednesday quote came out yesterday and I saw what Emily sent out, I was in a place where I honestly didn't believe it. I said, well, that's bullshit, to be able to feel joy and love and connection no matter how the other person is showing up. I had been brought to my knees in a place where I was wanting the other person to show up differently, and I didn't believe my own quote. But it was great because I did find it. By 3 a.m. I was like, yes, it's true. It just takes time. It takes sitting with yourself. It takes not giving yourself a deadline, doing whatever it takes. I love you. Take care. Bye-bye.